We are now midway through the first 100 days of Bola Tinubu's presidency. It's been 50 days since the former Lagos State governor took the oath of office as Nigeria's 16th president. The count is on, everyone, and we're monitoring developments in his first 100 days in office. Thank you for joining us on the program. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. We woke up this morning to the news that NNPC Limited has adjusted fuel pump price to 617 naira in Abuja and about 568 naira in Lagos. And Ipman has blamed the sudden hike to what they call the price of dollars. Joining us on the show this evening to discuss developments in President Tinubu's first 50 days in office is the 2023 SDP presidential candidate Prince Adewale Adebayo. The big question is, what's your thought on Nigeria in the first 50 days of President Bola Tinubu's presidency? Join the conversation right now on Twitter using the hashtag #first100days. Remember to tag at TVC News NG and at Nifemi Oguntoye. Let's get to it. President Tinubu today hosted presidents of the 3 West African countries at the presidential villa Abuja. He welcomed President Patrice Talon of Benin. He also welcomed President Mohamed Bazoum of Niger, as well as President Umaru Sissoko Embalo of Guinea-Bissau at the forecourt of the presidential villa. The visit comes after President Tinubu emerged the chairman of the Economic West African States Authority of Heads of State and Government at the last summit that held in Guinea-Bissau. And the issues relating to security and economy were discussed, as well as ways to strengthen the region's democracy. Former President of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, was also at the presidential villa to see Mr. President on some national issues. And after a long wait, the Senate will now be receiving President Tinubu's ministerial nominees list tomorrow. It's coming 10 days to the deadline. This development was disclosed by the clerk of the National Assembly earlier today. By law, the president is expected to forward the list of ministerial nominees to the National Assembly 60 days after the date he takes the oath of office. In the last few weeks, there have been different speculations of individuals who will make the list and perpetuate list circulating online. But presidential spokesperson Dele Alake denied the lists as unfounded. We'll be talking more about this in the course of the show. But let's tell you that queues are right back in some petrol stations in Lagos. Stations now sell as high as 617 naira per litre in Abuja and at 568 naira in other states. The NNPC Group Managing Director Melek Iyari says this development reflects realities of the market and the prices will eventually fall. He also assured that the NNPC Limited has no issues with supply of the product.
What I know is that the market forces will regulate the market. Prices will go down sometimes it will go up, but there will be stability of supply, and I'm also assuring Nigerians that this is the best way to go forward so that we can adjust prices when market goes. I don't have the details this moment, but I know that our marketing wing acts just like every other company in this business.
So when you say market forces are working, basically what it is that you can see the price of crude going up. A couple of week or so ago, the price of crude was hovering around $70 per barrel. Now it's hovering about $80 per barrel. So of course, the crude price also drives the product price. You know, because the importers are importing, they are basing it on the cost of importation plus the freight, plus other cost elements in terms of local distribution.
I'm hearing that people are saying now there is no fuel now. And most of them have the fuel, and they are not selling it because they heard that they want to increase the price. And this is what we are facing in this country. This is what we let the government bring actual price that we are going to buy this fuel and make it available at all time. Not we begin to people will now stressing, we blind beating ourselves or fighting ourselves, sleeping in the filling station before to get fuel.
See, we are even tired of all this. Every time we will just be working out, then the other we just see that fuel have already cost again. without informing anybody, without knowing anything. So we are tired. The time I can only say that maybe the federal government can help us to make a solution to this thing, because we are tired. And we vote for Tinubu because of this fuel, so that he can help us of this. And now the fuel have already been causing now, because we can't be blaming ourselves that why do you vote for Mr. President?
Is to look into this matter urgently. It needs urgent attention. It should try as much as possible to look into it, so that Nigeria will be, be able to run Nigeria smoothly. Every citizen will be comfortable and happy. The Bible says when the righteous rule, people will rejoice. So it's a concrete God's righteousness in all his doings, so that we Nigerians can be happy.
Are crumbling. They are not taking it easy with anybody right now, everywhere in Nigeria. I will advise him to take it easy, to calm down a little.
568 naira, that's how much petrol sells in Lagos per litre. But thankfully, filling stations like Bova sells at 499 naira. And that's one of the few questions we're asking. Why is there a 17 naira difference in what is being charged across filling stations? Perhaps we'll get answers in the course of this program. Joining me after this break is one of the 18 presidential candidates who wanted the job in February. He was the candidate on the platform of the Social Democratic Party. He joins us right after this break for more on President Tinubu's 50 days in office. Stay with us. In 50 days into President Tinubu's administration, we've seen various policies initiated, from fuel subsidy removal, student loans, unified exchange rate. There's the abolishment of support for professional bodies, signing of electricity bill into law, change of service chiefs, among others. Well, we are following very closely what the implication of these decisions have been on Nigerians and exactly what should be expected in the coming days. Prince Adewale Adebayo was the presidential candidate on the platform of the Social Democratic Party. Thank you for joining us on the program. Interesting developments we've seen in the past 50 days. We've seen the exchange rate unified and fuel subsidy removed. The result of that, as we speak today, is that fuel price has gone as high as 670 naira. I know that you had alternative plans in this regard. Your submission has been that we can make more money auditing the removal of fuel subsidy rather than having it removed. But this has happened now. What do you make of this latest development?
Well, good afternoon to you and your viewers. The most important thing is to understand that policies have consequences. Some are intended consequences, some are unintended consequences. And policies have framework, and the framework will include targets, timelines, and follow-ups. So what will surprise me is anyone who can say they are surprised by what is happening now. It is quite predictable. It's always been predictable that if you go the way we have gone about dealing with the issue of the price mechanism of petrol, especially where we say we are changing the policy with respect to subsidy so that the price can flow according to the market. Markets are one of those factors that the government is not supposed to have control over. So anyone who supports a measure whereby the price or prices of petroleum products or any product is supposed to be determined by the market, that person has forfeited the right to question the government or the issue of why is the price moving. All the other things that the government can do will have to be things done in anticipation of market movement or in reaction to government or market movement. But the idea that you can eat your cake and have it is impossible.
Talking about market forces, Prince Adebayo.
Yes, because the market forces If you remember in those days when we used to teach us what we call perfect market, you come into the market, you go out of the market, it is your production costs and your revenue that will determine whether you survive or not. So it is expected that it's an all-commerce market for anyone who has petrol to sell in Nigeria. So it is assumed that I'm a lawyer now, I'm in New York, facing my business. But if suddenly I discover that petroleum prices are rising, I may decide to advise my clients or advise myself to go and be supplying petrol in Nigeria. That's the whole idea. So whoever is coming for the purpose of making a profit out of what the price is confluencing at. So the equilibrium price, which is what the market can determine, may be far above what people can afford.
Indeed.
And that is where government taking some socio-economic measures.
We'll get to that measure and what government is doing shortly. But let's take a look at what the independent petroleum marketers are also talking about. According to that association's national president, the dollar as of today is around 800 naira. And in a deregulated regime, what determines the price of anything is the cost. The challenge right now is that the product is not refined here. Everything is imported. It will seem that it's not enough to remove subsidy if we don't refine the product in Nigeria and we still buy it in dollars. What are your thoughts in that regard?
You see, don't listen to the marketers. Because the marketers are not, they are private firms trying to maximize their own profit and guarantee their own stake in the market. I'm not saying they're not useful, but for policy analysis, you should treat them as they have the opposite objective as the end user. The end user wants to get petrol at affordable prices, and marketers want to make the best out of the market. They have their own costs, they have their own priorities. So government should not, government can synchronize with everybody, but the idea is that government should not lose control of the environment. And the environment as it is today is this. If you start producing in Nigeria, there are other benefits that will come, but not necessarily control of the price. Because the location of a refinery is not controlling more than 7 to 9% of the costs. Whether you are situated in Nigeria or you are situated in Atlantis, the most important thing is that you have to buy crude. And you have to buy the crude at market price. So if somebody who is buying crude escrows and bringing it to Lagos to refine, is expected to have lower freight costs, smaller insurance costs, quicker time. That assuming it may not work that way, but it's an assumption. But beyond that, there's no advantage that a refinery in Lagos has over a refinery that is in Canada. Because when it comes to paying labor, it's an industry-regulated, dollar-denominated payment for labor. When it comes to purchasing, repairing your catalytic cracking system, there is no lower price for somebody who's in Lagos, someone who's elsewhere. So it is good for the purpose of industrialization, national security, guarantees of supply and other factors. It is good to have as many refineries in Nigeria as possible. However, for as long as you are in the oil industry all over the world, your costing framework will be the same, your pricing framework will be the same. So that's why I say yes.
Indeed. Let's talk about, let's explore what the alternatives are right now. Some have said the compressed natural gas is something we have to look into so that it will be a matter of choice if you want to use gas or petrol. And we've seen how the price of gas has been, coming down in this part of the world. Do you agree?
Well, those are macroeconomic decisions that individual firms have to make a decision about. Because a government that cannot guarantee the price of petrol that takes a policy decision and says, it is not my responsibility to guarantee the price of petrol. That government cannot say, I want to guarantee the price of CNG, or I want to guarantee the price of LNG. You cannot be choosing one product over the other. What government needs to do is to foster the production of alternative energy sources by lowering costs for everybody, and including lowering finance costs, lowering infrastructure costs, lowering freight costs, and other costs like that. So once you, including regulatory costs, lower it for everybody. But as a social engineering suggestion, government needs to take the poor, because the people who are reacting most, who are showing extreme sensitivity, are the people who are quite poor. Because if the cost of transport, the cost of freight is taking almost 1/3 of your entire income, you'll be more sensitive to these prices. For example, I'm talking to you now. If the price of petrol gets to 2,000 naira, I will not react that much, because I've been in many places where the prices are around that anyway. So, but somebody whose salary is 70,000 naira a month, and who needs to take transport, and who already is spending like 25,000 now to take transport per month to earn that 70,000. If they have to spend 72,000 to earn 70,000, they will react. So what the government needs to do is to step out of this price mechanism and provide alternative sources to these people. So once they have it, in many countries of the world, I don't want to mention all of them, but you will see that prices of petroleum products are higher than ours, but the cost of transportation relative to the income of the citizen is lower than ours.
All right.
So if you work in London, you will be buying petrol 3 times how much we buy it now, even with all the hula baloo. However, to take a bus around London, even Greater London, will not take more than what you earn in an hour is what you will use in the whole day to do transportation. So this is where we need to focus. But if we are now, all of us are not becoming downstream sector petroleum managers, but now look at importing of this, exporting of that, what's the price? All of us in Nigeria cannot get into that business. What we need to understand is that since the government is easing off from that market and leaving to market forces, government has to pick up the tab for the lower end of the society by making sure that it becomes irrelevant to them. So that's why if you get to Europe today and you say, the price of petrol has gone up, most people say, oh, what does that mean? Because it doesn't reflect in their transportation costs.
I hear you.
It doesn't reflect. So that's what we need to do in Nigeria.
We're also paying attention to government intervention. We'll get to that shortly. But let's hear from the viewers right now. We asked the question, what's your thought of Nigeria 50 days after President Tinubu's inauguration? This tweet is coming from Adegoyega Abiola at Abiola Goyega. He says, I would like to advise federal government, not Tinubu, to rechannel proposed 8,000 disbursement to something beneficiary to all. For example, infrastructure, and likewise, if Nigeria can have, if Nigerians have been advised to sacrifice, what will Idona's sacrifice? Akoi's 70 billion, Akoi 40 billion bulletproof. And that's from Adegboyega. For Lavender Girl, she says, he had a fantastic start. However, I expected an immediate rollout of policies to cushion the effect of subsidy removal, which is yet to be done. I'm also completely unimpressed with the 8,000 naira palliatives. Makes no iota of sense, and the proposed 70 billion naira increment for the tone-deaf National Assembly, according to her. For Kyle Olaoye, he says, nice one so far. Really, the difference in political ideologies between APC and PDP is beginning to show. APC for capitalism and PDP for socialism. My thoughts, though. All right, Solomon Shegun, who says Nigerians can testify that the president is doing good, but the 8,000 naira palliative is a wrong move. We need more investment in our infrastructure, education, healthcare, increase minimum wage. I don't see 8,000 naira to the poorest having any impact on the economy. This administration should rethink that move. At Ayoriola Oluwatobi Joseph, he has a long list of displeasure here. He says cost of living unbearable, no substantial plan on ground for subsidy removal, great Yorubalistic appointment, failed youth empowerment scheme, and he doesn't sound nice at all towards this administration. Let's take one more and then we'll get back to Prince. The first 50 days of the president have demonstrated a clear understanding of how to run an effective and efficient government. Ostensibly, the government has been able to map out a strong policy to reposition the country on the right aisle. You can join the conversation right now. Remember to use hashtag first 100 days, tag at TVC News NG and at Nifemi Oguntoye. Prince, very quickly, let's talk about what we've seen as the first phase of government intervention in this regard. We're hearing 500 billion naira subsidy intervention. There's $800 million to be borrowed from the World Bank. 8,000 naira for 12 million households. That's exactly what has gotten quite a number of people talking. How do you react to this idea?
No, I don't need to react to it because I knew it was coming. It was included in the plan which the Buhari presidency had. I knew when it went to World Bank to negotiate all of this. So I think probably what the government is doing now is try to implement what is contained in the appropriation that they met on ground. So that's what they are doing. And they also maybe assume that people will be happy to hear that some 500 billion is to be shared to people, and people are going to be jumping up and down. But in reality, it doesn't make any sense. What they need to do is to ensure that they try to lower the cost of living, not by funding unsustainable cost of living. So what we need to do is to look at where people suffer the most. They suffer in the area of transport, food, and all of that. So if you have a family that used not to pay tuition fee in federal universities, or they used to pay a small amount of money, let's say they used to pay 30,000 or 50,000 to send their children for a 4-year course, so per annum. Now you increase the student fee, school fees to 200,000. Then you give the family 8,000. What difference does it make? So if you have somebody who used to go to work and spend 2,000 both ways, and the person is now spending 6,000, if you give him 8,000 once and for all, what difference does it make? So I think that it doesn't mean anything, and it can also be a basis for discontent, because some will say I didn't get it, some will say I got it. They might even exaggerate the number of people whom they pay. We've seen that in the past, where government, when it comes to giving cash to people, they give the cash to ghosts, and real human beings complain they don't see the cash. So the best thing to do is to pull the money together and try to do alternative things. For example, I'm sure the government is smarter than me. They should have sources. But if they don't, they can contact me. I can get them 5 to 7 companies that produce mass transit in Brazil, in Europe, in Asia, in South Africa, who can come to Nigeria and produce 100,000 units or more of mass transit buses. So you can give these buses to Nigerians to pay at a reduced cost. So they will enjoy it across board. It will lower cost for everybody. And you can do massive investment in infrastructure. People are not looking for handouts from government. I know it is easy to say, they will say, well, because you are not poor, so you don't need the money. But if you were assuming that you were talking for the poor, 8,000 naira will not do anything in the life of a beggar. So I think the best thing to do is to focus quickly on interventions. And if you use the money for productivity, like the example I gave to them, if you get these companies to come to Nigeria, they start producing, they will hire people, they will transfer technology, and you will still use the end product to do it. If you produce 500,000 tractors and give it to farmers, they will appreciate it, they will grow food. So you can do a lot with that money, and you can add other money to it, and you can actually fund things, and you can attract investment. So I was in the Europe last week, and I did assessment of investment available to go to Nigeria. It's almost $400 billion. So there is a lot of capacity for Nigeria to invest. So if you've taken this measure, this approach,
I'm afraid we have to go now. In the coming days, we'll see how these all play out. You also mentioned that the 800 million loan was already approved by the previous Federal Executive Council. Perhaps we can judge this administration better when we see the 2024 Appropriation Act itself. Interesting days ahead. Thank you so much for your contribution as we keep counting to see what happens in the next 50 days of this administration. President Bola Adebayo was the SDP presidential candidate during the February 2023 election.
Thank you very much, and God bless Nigeria.
Absolutely. That's our program today. You can watch a repeat broadcast at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. We're back at the top of the hour with more stories. I am Nifemi Oguntoye.